Yo, what is going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops, and today we are hopping right back into our top 50 list in NBA history. Today we have none other than Patrick Ewing, one of the most dominant centers from the 1990s especially, and I have Patrick Ewing ranked at number 33 on my all-time list. Now, before we get into Ewing, I'm gonna need you guys to hit the like button for me. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. You'll see every video that I post in my top 50 list, and I know you guys don't want to miss any of them because obviously you're watching one right now, unless you just like Patrick Ewing, of course. But without further ado, let's just stop with this nonsense and let's get right into the video. So Patrick Ewing, over the course of his career, was an 11-time NBA All-Star. He was an All-Star in 1986, along with this in 1988, all the way until 1997. In fact, he made All-NBA teams 7 times in his career. He made All-NBA First Team once in 1990, and he also made All-NBA Second Team in 1988, 1989, every year from 91 to 93, as well as 1997, in a heavy center-dominated era. He made All-Defensive Second Team 3 times as well in 1988, 1989, and 1992. Now, in terms of his MVP shares, he received votes 8 different seasons and was even a top 10 finisher 7 times. In fact, he was even a top 5 finisher 6 times. Now, 2 of those 6 seasons were where MJ was playing baseball, but he still had 4 seasons outside of that where he made this honor, including 2 back-to-back years of doing so in 1987, 1988, and 1988-1989, and along with this, he repeated the same thing in the 91-92 and the 92-93 seasons. However, for some all-time stat rankings, he finds himself with 81.4 defensive win shares, good for 9th all-time, a 50.1 VORP rating, good for 35th all-time, a 99.1 defensive rating, good for 22nd all-time, and a 126.4 win share total, good for 43rd all-time. And if there's one thing that Patrick Ewing adds to his resume, which isn't normal for most players, is immediate dominance. I mean, he averaged over 20 points per game and over 2 blocks per game for the first 13 years of his career from 1985 to 1998. This even includes a stretch of 9 years from 1989 to 1998 where he averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks every single season. Let's see how that compares with some of the best big men of all time for their careers. Now, note, we can't really go all the way back in time to guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell because, well, blocks per game weren't counted back then. So these players all fall in a later timeline than them. But in terms of how many seasons other players were able to accomplish this feat, Moses Malone did it 1 time, Kevin Garnett did it 1 time, Yao Ming did it 1 time, Bob Lanier did it 3 times, Bob McAdoo 3 times, Dwight Howard 4 times, Alonzo Mourning 4 times, David Robinson did it 8 times, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it 8 times, Tim Duncan 9 times, Hakeem Olajuwon 12 times, and Shaq 12 times. So as we can see, Patrick Ewing was elite for a very long time and among the greatest big men ever for this category. I mean, outside of Hakeem and Shaq, he was higher or just as high as every other center or big man I just named. And although our stats for the next one don't go back further than 1996, in Patrick Ewing's 2 healthy seasons that follow with the Knicks, his team was a plus 5.9 on-off rating with him on the court as opposed to off of it. But now let's jump into some of Patrick Ewing's most notable playoff moments. Over his playoff career, 20.2 points per game, 10.3 rebounds per game, 2.2 blocks per game, on 47% shooting from the field and 72% shooting from the free throw line. In fact, the only other players to average 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks for their playoff career was Tim Duncan, Shaq, Hakeem, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which many people would say are the 4 greatest big men to play since the block stat became official, so not including Wilt or Bill Russell. And over his career, Patrick Ewing has probably played in more winner-go-home games for both sides than a majority of NBA players. He has 10 total, with a record of 6-4 in these games, and in fact, ever since 2003, when the first round changed from 5 to 7 games, the only player who has eclipsed that many scenarios is Ray Allen with 11. I mean, take LeBron, for example, and how everyone always talks about how many Game 7s or deciding games he has played in, which is 8 total. Michael Jordan in his career played in 5 of these, including one against Ewing in 1992, where the Bulls took Game 7. But for Patrick Ewing to play in 10 of these is just insane. And while he was 6-4 in these situations, the 4 losses sting. As I mentioned, he lost in 7 to the Bulls in 1992, and while Ewing wasn't bad in Game 7, he just wasn't Jordan. But if the Knicks win that, they would take on the Cavaliers, where New York would probably have a pretty solid shot. And then if they move on and face Drexler's Blazers in the finals, they might have just won the whole thing. I mean, when we think of MJ's finals competition, I think the worst team that people will point to of those 6 teams that he beat is probably the 1992 Blazers. And it's not because Drexler was bad, but the supporting cast was a bit iffy, a bit inconsistent, and there wasn't a second star on that team. So this was a pretty good opportunity for the Knicks to win their first title since 1973. In the 1994 finals, Ewing struggled shooting nearly all series against Olajuwon and the Rockets. And while Hakeem was better than Ewing this series, when it came to Game 7, both were just I mean, they weren't bad, but they weren't good either. I mean, both of them shot about 40% from the field and true shooting for the game, and were very accident-prone all night. It was just going to be a matter of supporting cast, and as we know, Hakeem's was better. Vernon Maxwell, Sam Cassell, Otis Thorpe, and Kenny Smith all provided great stability this game, while the Knicks had some from Derek Harper and Charles Oakley. But nothing changed the outcome of this game more than John Starks going 2 of 18 from the field and 0 of 11 from 3 in a 6-point Game 7 loss. And quite honestly, one of the biggest choke jobs in NBA history. As a result, the Rockets shot 7% better from the field, 16% better from 3, 3% better from the free throw line, and 7% better true shooting in this game. And by the game's standards, Ewing was pretty good, but John Starks just sucked. But speaking of choke jobs, let's move into 1995 into Game 7, where they lost to the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Pacers did have a 3-1 lead in this series until the Knicks came back to force a Game 7. And with the Pacers up 2 on the final possession of Game 7, Ewing drove in uncontested for a layup and missed. The sad thing is that this is probably the most memorable aspect of Patrick Ewing's career, this layup, and it really shouldn't be. I mean, he had a game-high 29 points, he had 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks, 12 of 23 shooting from the field, but the missed layup that could have forced overtime is the only takeaway from this game, according to most people. And Ewing was pretty good for the series as well. And in the 1997 Game 7 loss to Miami, Ewing had 37 points, 17 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks on 17 of 27 from the field and 65% true shooting. This also included 14 points and 6 rebounds on 6 of 8 shooting for the fourth quarter to try and bring his team back from being down. And another sad aspect of his career is the fact that in the 1999 finals, as the 8-seeded Knicks went all the way to the championship series, which still is the lowest seed to ever make it there, by the way, Ewing got hurt in the conference finals matchup against the Pacers. And I'm not saying that if Ewing was healthy in the finals, it would change the outcome, because the Spurs were the number 1 seed for a reason, but knowing that David Robinson struggled already and without Ewing available, just imagine how much harder Patrick Ewing could have made this series on Robinson, or maybe even draw some limitations to the finals MVP that series, Tim Duncan. And I know guys like Marcus Camby and Kurt Thomas were a large part of this, but if you had a rotation of 3 to 4 bigs that could all protect the basket against a Twin Towers lineup, then you'll have a much greater odds than if it was just, 1 or 2. I mean, after all, the Knicks would have more momentum, being an 8 seed that has gone further than any 8 seed ever has. So it's just something to think about. Overall, when discussing Patrick Ewing and his career, I'm going to say he is slightly underrated. I mean, I was thinking of properly rated, because I know most people say he's the best Knicks player ever, and I personally don't agree with that. But you can't deny that he was one of the unluckiest players in NBA history. I mean, in terms of his playoff eliminations, this is how they all stack up. 1988, he lost to the Bird Celtics. 1989, he lost to MJ's Bulls. Then every year from 1990 until 1994, he lost to the NBA champion. 1995, he lost to Reggie's Pacers off that brutal missed layup. 1996, he lost to the 72-10 championship Bulls. 97, he lost to the Heat, even off an insane Game 7. 1998, he lost to Reggie's Pacers. In a year, he missed 56 games. And if they could have beat the Pacers, they might have had a shot all the way based on how the Pacers played against the champion Bulls that year. 1999, they made the finals as an 8 seed, but he couldn't play in the finals because of an injury. And then in 2000, they lost to the Pacers again in the Eastern Conference Finals, even though Ewing was great in the final game and even for the series, and the Pacers would go on to the finals to lose in 6 after some tough battles with the Lakers as well. So every year of his career, he kind of hit a wall, whether it was one of the greatest players or teams to ever do it, or he just got screwed by some other factors. In a way, it's kind of like Paul George, but of the 1990s. With all the criticism they both received for not having a ring, even though there's a lot of other things that you could call out first as a reason to why that is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about Patrick Ewing. I think, like I said, he's a little bit underrated. I was leaning toward properly rated based on his Knicks all-time status, but in terms of his all-time legacy in general with the NBA, I think he's a little bit underrated and overlooked from that 1990s era. He was a great player, and like I said, he just got extremely unlucky in the worst times. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I think that's gonna do it for me. So yeah, I'm out. Peace.